Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. So I am very excited to have a guest back on the show today. Last time we had her on the show, we were talking about Hawkeye. This time we are going to be talking about The Color Purple. Adetinpo Thomas, who plays Mary Ellen in the movie. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Pat. Thanks for having me. And great job pronouncing my name correctly.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's great to have you back. We had you on twice, once individually, obviously, and then where we had
Mhm.
the whole group of the LARPers. That was a
Yeah.
lot of fun to talk about that. But yeah, I just, recently saw the movie The Color Purple. Like I said, before we jumped on, I hadn't seen the original, so I was kind of going into this, fresh. And as far as just to kind of like start things off, so you play Mary Ellen in the movie.
Mhm.
Can you just one, because I'm curious, always curious when it comes to, these films, like what was your audition like for it?
Mhm.
And then what was it like getting into costume for the very first time as this character?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, so the audition process question can be long. How long do you want me to explain it?
Hey, yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I got an audition November or December 2021. Um, my husband helped me film it at the kitchen table in front of the wall. We like pulled some art down, filmed a lot of auditions there. And then I didn't hear anything. And then a couple months later, I got asked to my availability and if I wanted to do the table read for the movie where they're going to sit down in front of the execs and most of the cast was going to be there. They're going to play the songs and show some choreography. Very interesting. I've never seen a table read go that way. Um, and it was phenomenal. My breath was taken away. And I also figured that was probably my callback. I doubt that they were going to bring me in and not also give me the part I auditioned for. So that was it. We did that for 2 days, and then I end up on set eventually. In between that, I did have a fitting, and I'm deeply, I think everybody's has their feelings around the awards for this year, for one reason or another. But the fact that the costume director for this film did not get honored more, like, hurts my heart because the dress I was wearing was about 100 years old. When I tell you that there are very specific hat choices, like the wig was meticulous, the stockings were like the amount of detail that was there couldn't help but feel like you were in the world. And then of course all the sets, I get so excited and impressed by set deck because wow,
So
just
much
like
goes into it.
so much goes into it. So between the costume and the set, the world is it's almost impossible to not feel like you're in 1940 something. I think
Yeah.
it's four.
So somewhere around there. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you because me, I'm a big sucker when it comes for a lot of the behind the scene aspects and stuff like that. So there's so much detail that I feel like sometimes doesn't always get, recognized, and it really should because of how much time and detail for just getting these little things right that really go a long way because
Mhm.
you're watching a movie, you're watching a TV series, and you might not notice it, like initially, but like that little stuff can really take you out if it doesn't feel like it's, authentic that time period.
Absolutely. Did I answer your whole question? I felt it was two parts, and I only answered.
Just the second part as far as like stepping into the costume, trying that
Oh,
on for the first
great.
time.
Yeah. So putting it on and being on set, and then also just like the reality setting in. I passed my COVID test. It was negative.
We know how important that
That is
is.
always that was such a fear in those couple of years. Like I made it all the way here for fucking upfront Steven Spielberg. I can't get COVID. So when they told me I was good and I was able to get dressed, I think I have, and I haven't, there's all kinds of content you feel obligated to have, but there's more than one video of me like in my dressing room, like
Oh
in
yeah.
some version of this undress. But I was gleeful. I think that's a genuinely appropriate word. There was glee.
And with a level of detail for for a costume like that, like you said, did you instantly almost feel like you were that character, like at that moment, stepping and just putting on like the costume for the first time?
It definitely locks something in. The work I did for the audition was thorough. Um, as much as I would normally do, being at the table read, I had the opportunity, which a lot of people don't. I got to read the whole script before I got to set.
Oh wow.
Because usually, I mean, honestly, they may never give you the script, and if you get it, it's, not enough time, whatever. But I had context. I've seen the original. I know the Broadway musical as well. Um, so to be able to do all of that work, I actually make playlists for myself from each of my characters. Um, and I actually am going to go back now and make the like album cover for all these playlists, like that character, like me in costume. I didn't realize you could do that until recently. So I'm
That's
going to
really
nerd
cool. I didn't know
do
that
that.
either.
Yeah, but I am going to, not I'm going to, I have a playlist and I was listening to like 1940s music. I think that's honestly the biggest thing because anybody can hand you words to say, but you really have to anchor it in something. So being able to sit through the music and I'm looking at like what was on the charts in 1942, 1943, 1944, what songs were popular before that, how old is she, when would she have been born, what music did she maybe dance to with her friends versus now she's a wife, and just a lot of that context really then feels out what the character feels like. And then, of course, that final moment of now I'm in clothes for a funeral is like, ah, right. Whew. Okay,
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah, but no, it's always interesting to see because obviously everyone does they prepare for this stuff, like differently. So I always love just hearing kind of the stories of, that kind of stuff. I mean, you mentioned that you'd seen it. What was your relationship with the original film?
I think my relationship was a little bit different than most Black women. Um, Black people love, like, Black people are not a monolith. I cannot speak on behalf of all the Blacks. But when it comes to this story, this is something that most people have a strong opinion of because they've seen it 10 times. This was also one of those movies that would be on like USA or FX like once a week for like 10 years. Um, so always kind of peripherally watching it, but always being a little too young to understand the context. By the time Cynthia Erivo's in the Broadway musical, I stumbled back across the music and I'm like, oh my God, like, oh, okay, this is powerful. And once I realized who was in the cast for this, I knew it was going to be just heartbreakingly beautiful. Um, the original two, most people don't realize was like the NAACP tried to get people to boycott it because of its depiction of Black men. And the focus of the more modern one is about sisterhood, not about the like degradation of Black women. What I think was interesting, and I guess I'm grateful for, is that I was so young. I was not born when the original came out. So I was young enough when I'm watching it to not understand the gravity of it because it was at a time where you're giving Steven Spielberg directed it, which again, most people don't know. Um, and he's directing this all black cast about this story that is left untold, if ever told, and is not unfamiliar to women, regardless of culture, but it is a significant one. And sometimes the only kinds of stories Black people were allowed to tell for quite some time. So, what I thought was also interesting is the lens in which that version was told and what was focused on, which relationship dynamics were emphasized, how long a scene lingered, and also just the direction with the acting versus I think the style of acting now, 40 years later. Is that math good? Yeah, about 40 years later.
Yeah.
Is it? No. I don't know.
I'll
It's fine.
say, well, I say 80, I say, when did the original, do you know the exact year the original came out?
It was like 87. Don't quote
Okay.
me.
So it's a little because Ghostbusters and stuff is turning 40 this year, and that was 80, 84. So it's a little close to
It's
40.
okay.
Yeah.
So being that far removed from it, now you have somebody who's Ghanaian directing this story of Black women, and most non-Western white cultures have a deep, deeply rooted matriarchy in the society. Women are it used to be before like imperialism and colonialism. Women were given this respect and this the strength of women was not questioned. You wouldn't call somebody a girl for not throwing well, or for not running fast, because women were considered to be just as strong. So there is this reverence, there is this different feeling towards Blackness, there is this different feeling and an opportunity in ways to tell stories because now you can get drone shots and like huge cranes and like all these other things that didn't exist before. And I think the budget, I don't know what the budget was for the first one, we could look it up. But I'm sure it's a major difference. And then, of course, the way, which there's room for criticism for sure, but the way Warner kind of rolled this out and really um, made sure people were aware it was coming out was, I think, more significant than the original time. So, in short, to answer your question, this story for me has always kind of been in the zeitgeist. It's always been this like thing you can reference. There's all these lines that people would say kind of colloquially, and you're having fun in community, but growing up Nigerian American, as opposed to it coming like kind of trickling down from my parents and their interest in the story. It was me flipping channels at like 7 and going like, oh, what's the story? And I don't think I've seen the whole thing the whole way through. I don't think I've seen it the whole way through until very recently, actually, because I never realized I was always capturing like chunks of it. I'd see like the beginning 2/3 and then like the last half and then whatever. So to be able to very confidently like, okay, I've seen the whole movie, I've watched the whole musical, now I've read this whole script, I have context. It was really nice. And then, of course, working on this character, I did go back and watch the scenes with Mary Ellen because as much as this movie is based on the Broadway musical, Mary Ellen doesn't exist in the play. Her name is mentioned as a phone call. Like someone calls and tells her what's going on, tells Celie what's going on. But in the movie, they actually like, brought her back and had that whole experience because I think it's a scene that means a lot to people because it is this moment of honesty. It's heavy stuff contextually, but it is this moment of honesty and sisterhood in the shared trauma and then going, hey, like you can keep this store. I don't need it and I don't want it. This is your birthright. But I am gonna go and live my life with this money and try to like, start a new chapter. And she could have kept it. She could have done whatever. But there's an honesty there and a kindness that I always thought was really lovely.
Yeah, no, and that's something that I was going to actually question that I'm going to ask you in a little bit, just as far as like that, specific scene. No, no, you're fine. But that's like a scene too. One of my other favorite scenes of the film. And again, I mentioned to you before we jumped on, one of the scenes that like definitely got me choked up, a little bit watching it. So, I mean, just your guys' performances. I was like, I had no idea. I had heard of the color, like I knew what the I'd heard of the film. I didn't know really like what it was about or anything like that. And so now, like I'd mentioned to you, I'm curious to go back after seeing this one, watch the original film just because it was such a big movie when it came out, still is today. But just to see those differences that you were, talking about, obviously, like you said, the technology. I can't believe, I mean, granted, I wasn't born in, the 80s or whatever, but it's like thinking, because there's certain films that I saw that came out around that time, and you're like, holy crap, 40, 40 years old.
No, the 90s was 10 years ago, and I'm gonna die on that hill. I think that's why we both were like,
Yeah, no, no, it
saying
wasn't
that
that
then.
long ago.
But I don't want to commit to this answer. I was watching something and they were talking about how 90s projects now are period pieces because we are as far from the 90s as the 90s was to the 60s.
Oh, geez.
Now those would still be, and I'm just like, no, shut up, stop talking. No, no.
Yeah. No, no,
So,
there's movies in the 90s that,
mm,
whatchamacallit, Hocus Pocus,
yeah.
that, because that came out in 93. So that just turned like 30 years old. And it's like, oh my God, like what is,
Mean Girls was 20 years ago. That
yeah,
does
yeah.
not, I don't like it.
No, 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 no. It's just like you look back and you're like, there's no way that movie,
Hmm.
or that show came out that long ago. So, after you kind of talked about this already a little bit, as far as like after you were cast as Mary Ellen, um, Was there anything else that you did to kind of like immerse yourself in a world? I know you talked about, doing like the playlist and things like that, kind of researching a little bit into the history. Was there anything else that you did to kind of really get into the mindset and immerse yourself like in her world or
I Character work is my favorite part of acting outside of the actual like acting, but generally that's the most fun because that's the puzzle. It's like, how does this person exist this way and why? So the playlist helps for that to be like in the right mindset when you're finally in your trailer. But I often will journal in character.
okay.
It's just kind of like general musings about what will I do tomorrow or the situation that I know is coming up that I don't know how it ends yet, but this is my anticipation towards it. Um, and what else did I do?
I mean, I feel like being, we talked about the costume, but I feel like also just being on the set, just seeing,
Mhm.
all the buildings and everything, the set decorating all done, seeing everyone all done up in their costumes. I feel like that like almost just kind of like instantly also puts you right in that, that mindset. You're like, yep, this is
Um,
the 1940s
yeah, the
and it
tone is
looks
immediately set
beautiful.
for sure.
Yeah, it was like that's I mean, that's too I didn't realize when you were talking about like the costume designer that didn't get any, like nominations or anything like that. It's
It
too bad.
wasn't that she got zero, just not as many as should have existed. And of course, that's kind of always how it goes, right? Aretha came out, should have been monumental. Aretha Franklin herself said, I want Jennifer Hudson to play me one day in a biopic. She'd been working with her about different aspects of her life. And that movie came and went, and very little attention, awards or otherwise, was really paid to it the way that it deserved to be. Even with the original Color Purple, I believe it got like 11 nominations and didn't win one of them. Because also, it's not just me and my $100 dress, I mean, my 100-year-old dress. It's also when you're watching those dance numbers and there's 100 people standing there dancing in clothes that either was made so that because fabric didn't do that back then, it wasn't
Yeah.
going to bend and move the way they needed it to, or you had to source that much. Dude, at this point, you're finding clothes in people's closets, like at best, if it's not already in a costume house. If you're looking for authentic, somebody who wore this in the 20s, very few things like that still exist. And to
Oh yeah.
find it in mass for scene after scene after scene, I hope as an industry that our focus shifts back to the art of filmmaking and not just the prestige of it.
I also think, something which I believe we might have touched base when we initially were like talking about like Hawkeye, but like another area of the film industry that I feel like doesn't get enough recognition is the like the stunt area. Like I honestly feel like they should get their own, awards too, because same thing, just the stuff that these people put their bodies through,
Mhm.
just the level of, art that goes into creating, making these scenes look like what, when we watch them on the big screen.
There's a category, I don't remember which award show, but there is like a best stunt team because I remember Marvel often would get the nomination, but it's not in as many as it should be, and
Yeah,
certainly
like
isn't aired if it is.
I don't believe like for the Oscars, like I don't believe they have, and I correct me if I'm like wrong, like anyone out there, but I don't believe they have like a category for that. So there's just different areas that go unnoticed, and I feel like that's so wrong because of the amount of work that's put into these projects is
The
just insane.
significant reverence for people who do stunts because it is so dangerous and I don't
Yeah,
want
you're
to say
putting your body
thankless,
on the
but in a
line.
lot of ways it's thankless because you're doing all of this to make sure this other person looks really good. And oh, by the way, while you're doing this very dangerous, cool thing, make sure no one can see your face.
Yeah,
Ah. And now
exactly.
they're talking about being able to do like motion capture and then still and just paint the like,
Oh yeah, I know that was a whole issue.
yeah.
It's like I'm obviously like I'm like against that. Just where I've done some background like work, extra work, and being able to come in and be like, oh, we can scan your likeness and then use it, whenever we want to, and we basically don't need you guys anymore. So
Yeah, forever and ever and all time. It's
yeah,
almost, I think, verbatim what it says till the end of time.
yeah, no,
It's
that's definitely something that I'm opposed to, and I
Yeah.
can almost guarantee like a lot of fellow actors probably feel the same. Well, fellow actors say I don't
Mhm.
consider myself an actor. I've done a couple like extra parts, but a lot of actors out there, I'm sure
It's
feel.
not acting, I'll tell you that, because that's also a very thankless position to have on set. People often are not thinking about you. You're not getting the same food the crew's eating. You're probably eating something cheaper. There's like Cheetos and Gatorade versus the like smorgasbord of crafty that exists for the rest of the people who are there. And to some degree, I get it, but I'm not an advocate for putting profit over people's lives and like quality of life.
Yeah,
I never have been, and may I never become one. So to be an extra myself and be on things, to be forgotten in the sun wearing wool in July, to be herded around like cattle, like you're essentially just breathing chairs sometimes. But
yeah, pretty
also,
much.
you need people in the scenes. You
Yep.
need the world to feel full, and you can't just have anybody doing it because I'm sure you watch something and you're like, what is that one extra doing back there? And it's so distracting, or
That
it's really good and it adds to the thing. So it's,
that's something that I've joked about with a couple other people that as far as now having done a couple projects that have been an extra in, it's something that and I try not to do it because obviously I don't want to take myself like out of the movie, but
Mhm.
sometimes especially more so when it's like a crowded scene, there's a lot of like extra people in the background. I'll just be looking at some of the extras and you see them having conversations, and my first thing is I'm like, I wonder what they're having a conversation about because oftentimes
You're
you're
not allowed to talk out loud.
well, that and you meet this person and you're just like, if you are having a conversation, a lot of times it's just random stuff. It's like
Mhm.
not necessarily really about like what's going on in the scene because you just met this person like, 10 minutes ago or something like that. So that's something that watching movies now, I'll sometimes find myself looking at like extras and I'm just like, I wonder what's going on like there. But I try not to because like I said, it takes me out of like watching the film, but it's funny sometimes.
Well, good on you, because I don't think depending on the plot, I cannot help but deconstruct everything down to someone will say a line and I'm like, ah, that was ADR. That was said on the day. I can hear the difference. And I'm
See
like, oh,
that?
the person was holding the fork in the other hand, or there was food on the fork when we cut away from them. And like, generally speaking, most people don't notice those things, but I'm not normal. And it's also part of our gig. It's part of the thing.
Yeah.
You get so obsessed with the minutia of what's going on.
Yeah, so if it you work in the industry, I feel like to a degree you kind of can't help it because you're just around that stuff so much that you just pick up on it. So in a way, it's like I feel a little sad for you just because like where you go to like you can't sometimes you said you just can't help it and you just
Hmm.
deconstructing the scenes where you wish you could almost just be like nope, shut off like that part of my brain and just enjoy the scene for what it is.
Yeah, it's probably why I like action thrillers so much, and like mystery, supernatural things. Some of it can be formulaic still, but that always keeps me on the edge of my seat. Not sure what's going to happen next.
Yeah, exactly. A specific scene actually that I wanted to, to talk to you about. We were talking about the store scene
Mm.
with Celie. So I that was one of the scenes that watching it, I just couldn't help getting like a little, choked up. The scene was beautiful. Both you guys, amazing performances. Can you just talk, go into a little bit more detail about filming that scene and what it was like, working with Fantasia on that scene?
Well, first of all, she is a lovely human being, like
Uh,
genuinely.
she
It,
seems like from what I've seen.
truly, like when all was said and done, I'd spent like 3 full days with her. Certainly not as much as other people on the project, but there was no like breaking of a mask. Like it was really just her heart is very kind. She held a lot of space, which I is always nice to be on set when you're working with number one and you're like, I don't know what you're like in real life. You might be a complete asshole. And she was not. She was far, far, far from it. Um, I was treated absolutely like a peer on set and also coming from the director down, which I thought was really beneficial because being on set and having to prove you deserve to be there is not the reason you're there. You're there to focus on this. So the more people are adding on bullshit for you to filter, the harder it is for you to do your job.
Yeah.
So being able to work with her, and we spent, I think, 8 hours doing this scene over and over from different angles, and you're finding new things. And um, there's a woman, Tangela, who worked on it with us. She was the dialect coach, but she's also a very talented actress as well. So there'd be a little bit of conversation, like, what are you thinking about this? Or she would say, like, try it with this inflection. And it would just change the entire meaning of the sentence. I know factually, I would not have done as good of a job if not for Tangela. And then to have Blitz there, who also very unassuming, very calm presence. You hear stories about people where you can't go to the bathroom or you can't sit down, or you'll do a scene 75 times. And personally, I'm like a one, two, three takes, let it go kind of girl. Um, I recently found myself thinking I probably would turn those opportunities down because at that point, who is this about and what is this about? Because it can't be, you're not serving the story doing this unless the story you want to tell is just like, let me not get in trouble for saying that, but I mean it. I like to be trusted to do my job the same way I trust everyone else to do theirs. And that's how it felt. I think you start off in this industry with a lot of imposter syndrome. Um, Also because people make you feel like you don't deserve to be there or you're not important enough to be acknowledged in some way. And I have found very, very grateful for this. I have found that the more important the project is that I step foot on, the more comfortable I am being there, the more I feel like I belong. Um, and that is just like, yeah, well, of course, of course I'm here. But when you're an extra, when you're a stand-in, when you're a PA, when you have one line or one word, people don't need that kind of confidence or presence from you. And that can be also something to reckon with and then have to undo when it's finally your turn to like take up space. All that being said, doing the scene and the topic of the scene, it would be easy to be heavy-handed in the communication. But what I thought was really nice was just how honest we tried to keep it and how that truth was enough because the facts were the facts and the context was the context. So I didn't need to put a hat on a hat. I
Yeah.
just needed to be there. And she brought so much, just very, very giving. Because, sometimes people will, all right, you got my coverage? Okay, cool. And then they'll walk away, and then their stand-in comes in and is like reading lines off the piece of paper and trying to give you everything they have. That's hard. And I think that's unfair because that tells me you're not there for the craft of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is interesting. That's why I'm there. When people were talking about the strike and the contract, and they're like, come on, like imagine you being able to sit on your couch and your digital doubles like outwork for you. I'm like, no, that's the opposite of the point. I want to be there. What are you
Yeah.
talking
No.
about? What incentive is that?
Yeah.
I
No.
want to do it. I just want to do it more and get paid better for it. Because when that's a different conversation.
No, I mean, yeah, slippery. So you don't want to get
Hmm.
into, that like situation. And if you really, I feel like if this is something that you really like, you love acting, you should want to be out there, doing it. Like you don't want to
I
have,
would
like you
think
said,
so. But I maybe the idea is you're on set for the thing you really want to do, and your digital doubles doing that commercial you think is dumb. I don't know.
yeah.
Um, I don't know. I That's not some of interest to me. That I found to be off-putting as a statement. And it certainly wasn't an incentive to vote yes on the contract. Um, whatever that ended up being anyway. But I had
No,
a good time on set.
I agree with you on that. It's, like for me, having done like some of the background work, and now having the experience of being on a set and like knowing how long, like some days they can be,
Mhm.
it's like 12, 14, 16 hours, shooting or whatever. And a lot of times you're just sitting there, especially as an extra, you're
Mhm.
sitting there until they need you for a specific scene. They might
Mhm.
only need you for one scene and that's it, but you have to be there, pretty much all day. And so if you go into it and you're just kind of like, oh, like I just want to be on a movie set, around famous people, and
Mhm.
it could, I feel like it can be kind of boring because you're just, sitting around. But if it's
Yeah.
something that you're like, I'm just sitting there watching these scenes unfold, previous projects that I've worked on, like a specific example, it was supposed to be fall, and someone had like a bag of leaves, and they were dropping them with like a fan, like blowing them down.
Yep.
Like to me, that just it gets me so, and that's just like, I guess like me being a little nerdy, but like gets me so excited just seeing like the movie magic behind everything.
Movie magic.
Yeah. So
And I think it's
I love it. Just like being there in that moment, getting to see it, and then, later on once the film or series comes out, getting to see how it looks, like on film, but then thinking back and being like, I remember being on set, what that looked like when we were shooting it.
Mhm.
And yeah, I never find myself bored when when I'm on these sets. So I'm right there with you.
No, I love that because it means a lot to know how the sausage gets made and still be willing to eat the hot dog.
Yep.
And still be invested and still be down for the ride. So to see that I have gotten in the habit now when I'm filming something right before they call action or like, last looks or whatever, I will record my perspective before we're supposed to be filming. Most people don't realize on the other side of the camera, there's like 75 people and another like 30 people outside doing whatever,
Oh
like
yeah.
and I mean outside of the set, building things, talking, like whatever. There is so much kind of commotion constantly. There's always all this movement depending on the topic of the project, but it's not a simple thing, even as an extra, as background, to know the camera's on you, and then you're supposed to like, be normal, be casual, but don't actually talk. Just move your mouth. And actually, when so and so walks by, then that's when I want you to get up and stand and go over there. And then when the other person walks by, then you cross and go. We have to do it again. Sorry, when I said that you need to stand up when he walks by, I meant that. So do that next time. Like, and you're just like, ah.
I know, especially if it's like I feel like you're like first time being an extra, you're
Yeah.
just kind of like you're sitting there like we're like, wait, what?
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
It's a whole different word, but it was the first time that I did it. It was just it was like wow, getting to kind of see that. And yeah, exactly like you said, you don't know what you don't know. You're watching like a film or like, a TV series, and you just don't know that there's, hundreds of, sometimes like maybe even like thousands of people like possibly like on a set, doing all these different things
Mhm.
like you said. And it's crazy the just kind of what goes on, and just to film one specific scene too. You're
Mhm.
like, what? Because the thing that I find funny now is like going on social media, and I see people will be talking about, so for example, like Stranger Things. So
Mhm.
the last show that, came out like a couple of years ago, and people I see them commenting and they're like, well, why is it taking them so long to, to film this? Like, why is it taking so long for this to come out? Never mind we had it like a strike, but also I'm
Yeah.
like, you guys do realize that you don't just like film this in like 2 weeks or something like that and
Right.
everything's all done.
Mhm.
Like you film the project, which can take, months, and then
Mhm.
after that, then you have to go in, you have to edit everything. It takes a long time, but again,
Mhm.
if you don't know this stuff, if you're just like watching, I guess you don't probably like really understand kind of how that works, but it's just funny to see it from the other side and people saying that kind of stuff.
And sometimes those are the people speaking the loudest.
Yeah.
People have so many opinions about how things should work and get made, but aren't speaking from a place of knowledge. And that's dumb.
I would much rather someone take their time on a project, take whatever time you need, because I want the
Make it
project
well.
that, yeah, I want it to be a quality product. I don't want you to just bang this thing out, throw it out there, and then you're like, like it was okay.
Yeah. Tell me that you're traumatized by the end of Game of Thrones without telling me you're traumatized by the end of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my Roman Empire. I can't tell you how often I have that conversation. They're just like, I can't believe they would do that to us.
Well,
We were there for years.
hopefully this time around with with House of the Dragon,
Yeah,
maybe they kind of learned their lesson from the original series.
here's hoping. I really enjoyed that first season of that.
Yeah, yeah. And I just saw that Millie, I don't know if you saw like that like for news, but she just got cast as Supergirl for James Gunn. So she played
Mm-mm.
the younger version.
Yeah.
So she just got cast as a Supergirl for James Gunn's like DC. So and I actually just read that
Mhm.
comic not too long ago, so I can't wait to check that out. But But anyways, I could talk to you about all kinds of like random
Oh,
stuff as far
so
as
sorry. Let's
acting
talk
goes.
about the movie I'm in.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm curious, like when you actually finally got to watch the film for yourself, what scene for you had the biggest impact on you as like an audience member?
As an audience member, not as an actor in the movie.
Yeah, yeah, as an audience member watching the film.
That's a good question. So a lot of them, I think, really like had me moving in my seat, and I was really excited. I think the first one that really gutted me was when they go see Sophia in the jail.
Oh, yep.
And they're just trying to give her that Thanksgiving plate, and she's like, "Don't leave me." And I'm just like, "No."
God.
And because the just the absolute amount of injustice where you're trading your dignity for your life,
Yep.
and how often that happened, and sometimes still does. That just really sat with me.
Yeah, no, I'd say so that moment, your moment in the store, and then we talked about like earlier the ending scene where she's reunited with their children. Those three scenes, I'd say, were definitely the ones for me, I think. Well, even actually, no, even the dinner table scene where she, kind of stands up for herself and just kind of lets him have it. And I was like, that's
Mhm.
right. You give it
Yeah,
to
hell
him.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. But
yeah, both actresses are just fantastic. I'm very excited for Danielle and all the nominations she's getting. She deserves it.
I think was it her? Because I caught part of it. I didn't see the whole thing. It was on the news, but I thought it was a conversation with her. They were interviewing her on the phone, and it sounded like she was, crying, just talking about like the nomination and working on this. I
Mm,
believe it was. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but I thought that was her. And I mean, for working on a project like this, and to get anytime you get a recognition like that,
mm.
obviously, I'm sure means a lot to to an actor to be recognized like on that level.
I think so. And I guess it depends on the weight you put on it, but it would be naive of me to say that it's not meaningful. Because if nothing else, you can negotiate your pay better, which as a Black woman, I imagine is a huge relief, even though it's not much of a difference.
Yeah,
What's difficult, or what I appreciated watching them go on the press tour, was just how vulnerable they're willing to be in so many of these conversations. I think the three of them, Taraji, Fantasia, and Danielle, have had difficulties in life in various ways, but the amount of grace and gratefulness and oh, sorry, appreciation maybe is a better word. Um, the amount of kindness that they're willing to kind of pour into the conversations, because press junkets, I guess, don't look the way they used to, but to sit
yeah,
and answer essentially the same like 7 questions 100 times, you can give the same, like after about the 20th time, you're probably just giving the same like rote answer.
yeah,
They were really, what I just saw was Fantasia and Danielle talking to, I want to say she was a young British woman. She was a Black woman. And she was just talking about how, like, well, when does it stop being hard? Why does it have to be hard for us to experience the good things? And I think all three of them are in tears, just like, no, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be um get to the other side of this. It's preparing you for the next thing. It's not all in vain. And I think a lot of people need that pep talk. So to have the wherewithal to be doing that on your press tour, I think is incredible.
no, yeah. I mean, I know for like, well, I say not as far as like big press drunk. It's like in person, but I've done some, like online where obviously after like the pandemic, I feel like a lot of it shifted to doing like online and
Mm.
makes it a little bit more like accessible too. But I can imagine, you're sitting there for a couple hours and you get the same several
Mhm.
questions. So that's why when preparing for some of these, these interviews, I try to make sure that I get some questions, and because I'll go and watch other interviews that they've done. So
Mhm.
I'll go and watch and see. It's like, okay, they've been asked this question a million times. Like, try not to like, or if it like I'm gonna ask it, try and ask it maybe like in a different way. Um, nothing feels better for me is when, I'm interviewing an actor or, cinematographer, director, etc. And they tell me they're like, I've never been asked that before, or that was a really great question.
Mhm.
That just, makes me feel really good because, like you said, I know you guys get the same questions on a lot of things. So it's nice to know that you stand out a little bit.
No, and you do actually. It's not a simple gig. Um, and I don't know if this is too much inside baseball. Stay tuned. We're gonna get back to the plot. But it takes a lot to put that much into it and then be able to engage and kind of go on the fly, bring it back, but also ask things that aren't frivolous as well. Because you can ask anything, but for it to still be rooted in the context of the project or the context of this person's training or experiences, that's not simple.
Yeah.
I was
No.
happy to come back.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you came back because like I said, both times that we had you on, I love talking to you. And as you can see, like I know we keep going to like different subjects, but it's like you're someone that I can just talk to a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and we could probably have a
Yeah.
conversation for a couple hours. And
Just bring me on every quarter. I think that's it. I think just once a quarter, we're going to talk about everything that came out.
yeah, I say maybe we'll just like start like
You know.
our own like separate, like podcast where it's just like, behind the scenes of granted, like you definitely have a lot more info as far as like that goes, where I've only done a couple projects, but I love that kind of stuff. So yeah, we could go on for hours, just talking about this. But
Well, it's because we like it. It's because we love it. And the interest isn't like fame and fortune. It's because it's storytelling.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, like behind me, I have like a bookcase where it's just literally, I love getting the art of books. So like anytime like a film's coming out, I always check to see them. Like, I really hope they're doing a behind the scenes, either like a
Mm.
book or maybe there's a feature on a magazine, and it's like I pick that stuff up and I just love going through it. Or maybe there's a documentary or something like that. I live for that stuff. So
There's a good one for The Color Purple, the coffee table book that came out.
I'm gonna have
It's
to check.
stunning.
I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
check that out then. As far as just like working on the project, I guess like what is the biggest thing that you're going to take away from this, this experience of working on a project that, means so much to so many people?
Hmm. Good question. Um, I feel like there's a couple bullet points there. I feel like watching this press tour and the award season kind of roll through, it's given me a lot of context and clarity about the industry because there's parts of it that just don't apply to me until they apply to me. And they don't necessarily apply to me more now, but I'm closer to the source. So I'm feeling a little bit more of the warmth of the sun, if you will. So the clarity of show business is there. I think though the most life-changing and kind of earth-shattering moment was watching it the first time, and it was beautifully told. I am caught off guard by how, this thing looked or this thing sounded. But when this credit started rolling and my name like went up the screen, I was like, if I never act again, no one can say I didn't do it. And there's a very specific kind of peace that comes with that. I am not ignorant to how lucky my career has been and how many cool projects I've been able to do. And if I were to never do anything else, it's more than some people will ever dream of, let alone actually being able to attain. And I feel like it's taken a huge weight off of me as an artist to feel like I have to prove myself or I have to make sure that my goal now is to make sure people know I exist so they can put me in their movies. Like that's my thing. Um, but if I never act again, I also won't feel like I didn't have an opportunity to show myself.
And that's a good weight to have off of your shoulders too.
Yeah. For now, we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. For now, we're always putting pressure on ourselves. It seems like at some point. So I'm the same thing. But I mean that. Yeah, it's just really nice to, I guess, to be at that point in your career. And I mean, like you said, you've been a part of some incredible projects, already. So anything like else is pretty much just kind of like the icing
Icing.
on the cake.
Mhm. Now
Yeah.
I'm trying to get A24 to let me be in anything they make. I don't know who I need to
Ooh.
talk to. I don't know who I need to talk to at A24, but if you're out there, message me because I'll clear my schedule for you.
We gotta make that happen. I mean,
Yeah. I
A20,
yeah.
I just love the fact that that studio and it's funny because I feel like now they still make projects that are, they're still like, independent projects. They pick up projects, independent projects, but I feel like they've kind of become a little bit more like mainstream. A lot more
Mhm.
of my friends that are definitely not
Right.
nerdy about the movie industry know like, oh, this is an A24 film, or they know who A24 is. But I remember years ago watching some of those earlier A24 films, and I just appreciate that it seemed like every one of their projects, they're always taking swings.
Hmm.
You know, nothing really ever feels like the same. And that's something that I really appreciate. Just even though, in this industry, there's tons of sequels, there's tons of big franchises, and those are great. Like I love those. I mean, I don't love, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, 30 plus film series in, but it's nice to get these projects like that where it's like something that hasn't been done before or seeing from a different point of view. So definitely need to make that happen. And if you get in whatever A24 project, I'm just gonna be so freaking happy.
You're my first call.
Awesome. And
We'll line up the interview.
we will definitely be talking about.
The indie space is so interesting because that is kind of where you can do things a little more daring. The movie maybe only cost 5 million. So if you make 10 million, like holy moly, you did it.
Yep.
So for them to now be getting to a place where just like if you said Marvel or DC, um, people are going, oh, that's who's making it. I'll be there.
Yeah.
I have gotten to a point now where I don't need to see like a trailer for A24 movie. I'll just go watch it. What is it?
Exactly.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. A24. I'm there.
For our generation to have a studio that's not doing big blockbuster franchise things that people are that now has that kind of reverence, I think is really cool.
And I hope it stays that way too, because like I said, where I just feel like they have become, it seems a little bit more mainstream as far as just being in the like the audience, like everyone knows about them now, where years ago they were a little bit more of like a, smaller like studio. I hope that it continues that way, that even if maybe they start doing some bigger projects, but I hope they don't forget about, bringing on a director that's, maybe this is like their first project that they've ever done. Um, I mean, that's where I discovered Anya Taylor-Joy watching The Witch for the first time. That's like
Mhm.
one of my favorite horror movies in like the last, decade. And
My praise. You watch lots of horror movies.
oh, yeah, let's say we could have a whole conversation about that, but but I won't get, too far off the conversation. So uh, obviously, this project means so much to, to so many different people. Um, what does it mean to just be a part of a project like this? That I mean, you guys, I saw the box office for it was like Christmas Day. It was like you guys had like a huge, opening day, which is awesome. But just a more, in, I guess, like having an impact on people. What does it mean to be a part of a project? We've kind of talked about that, where you said, if you never do another project, that you feel like
Mhm.
you're good to go now. But
I didn't. Yeah.
like being part of a project like this, just what does that, what does that really mean to you as an actor?
I think as an actor, versus as an artist, which I maybe it was my answer before. As an actor, the hope is that it's kind of a foothold and a step forward. There was no part of me that was like, people are going to see me as Mary Ellen and I'm going to get an Oscar nomination. But I do think it offers legitimacy. It would be like having can't think of literally anything right now. Sorry, I don't have an example. It would be like having True Detective, right, on your resume. It doesn't matter which season, American Horror Story. People, it's something people have heard of, and
Yep.
if they let you in it, then you must be okay.
Yeah. No, I know exactly like what you're talking about. So having just like having worked on like, I mean, but you'd like, you had Hawkeye like before, so you feel like just another kind of like another thing to add to your resume as far as like that goes.
I'm hoping, because if nothing else, you're winning over if no more people go out to watch it. The casting directors have seen it. The producers that I need to see probably have seen it. The Academy has seen it. And you want to be put in front of people enough that your face becomes familiar. So when it's finally an opportunity that you might actually have a shot at, you don't seem like some rando.
Yeah.
They've watched you several times and didn't even know it. Did
Yep.
you realize it was me on screen?
Yes. No, I did. I recognized you because I
Okay,
mean I
that's
went
weird.
into it, you know,
Knowing I was in it.
knowing you were in it and I was looking for you. So I recognized you.
I was
But
at the hair salon and there's like the same group of women who are always there. And I was, chatting up the lady that I see all the time. And I was like, how you doing? She's a principal. I was like, how you doing? How's the school going? And I was like, have you seen The Color Purple? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I was in it. And she's like, which character? It's like, that's how it goes.
yeah.
That's how it goes.
But I mean, no, I get what you mean though. Just having that, you never know. You never know who's like
Hmm.
who sees the project, and it might not be something that even like right away, but it might be something a couple of years down the road. All of a sudden, you get like a an email or a call, and it's like, "Hey, I saw you were in The Color Purple. I
Right.
really loved your work in there. Want you to be a part of this film." Um, yeah, you never know. It's kind of like with me, like reaching out to different people as well. It's like sometimes I've sent
Never know.
an email off to someone and don't hear anything for weeks, sometimes like months, and then all of a sudden, like I'll get an email and it'll be from that person, and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that I guess like I made an impact on you. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, you never know when that might come back around.
What's interesting too is I did 5 or 6 shorts last year. Um, Things I could work on because it was during the strike and other things weren't
Yeah.
there and people knew I was available because there was a strike. And it's very likely that the combination of those shorts will might do more for my career than this movie does.
Wow.
So never sleep on the short films either.
Yeah. No, and plus, I mean, it's something too that it's great that you were able to still work on stuff, during the strike. Because it's one
Interesting.
of those, or I could be wrong. Like I could just be like speaking for myself, but I feel like it's one of those things. Like for me, if you don't use something, not necessarily that you would lose it, but it's like, I feel like acting to a degree is like a muscle, and it's like if you're not doing it for a period, it can kind of when you go back to do your next film or next project, it can kind of take a little bit to get those muscles, working again.
I imagine it can get a little rusty. Um, might be a little wobbly when you get back on the bike, but ideally you find your groove. I think what can be the most jarring is if you were to be doing it and you've changed dramatically since the last time. A lot of people never change dramatically, but if some major life event has happened or whatever,
Yeah.
your approach to the work, the significance of a character's whatever could be much deeper or more shallow than it would have been before.
To wrap things up, I know we've been talking for a little bit here. Is there anything else that you just want to say as far as working, on the film and just to the fans, everyone that's, gone out, seen the film, and it's now, if I remember seeing correctly, it's now like on like digital, like streaming and stuff like as well, right?
Oh, if it is, I need to go pull my scene from it and put it on my reel.
I
But
believe
no,
I thought I
I
saw
haven't
that
seen
it
that.
was. But if not, like I know it's still because I actually just looked and it's still playing like in theaters. So just for everyone that's had a chance to see it so far
Yeah.
as what do you want to say to them and just yeah, as far as just like working on the project in general?
I had a really lovely experience working on this, and it's something that will stay with me probably the rest of my life. Thank you to everybody who went and saw it. Go see it again. Tell your friends about it. It's really important to support Black content like this because when a studio takes a big swing and the numbers don't match in the box office, then they're less likely to do it the next time. So to like a thing and go see it, I mean, even the streaming numbers, I imagine will be useful. But if you can go buy a ticket to this, to Origin, American Fiction, the Book of Clarence, go support because that's the only opportunities people have if you can prove that you can make money. Because at the end of the day, it is still show business.
Oh, it's so important, and as far as just like I mean, also just supporting theaters too. I'm a big
Hmm.
I love don't get me wrong, I love streaming. It's great to have stuff at your fingertips and have access to it, but I'm definitely someone that if you can go see a project in theaters, for me at least personally, that's just a whole different experience than getting
Yeah.
to see it, on your TV. It's great to have it to watch whenever you want to, but to
Mhm.
experience it for the first time, being in a theater and watching it, that's just something that I'll always choose that if I can,
Mhm.
as far as to watch a movie for the first time.
No, there are absolutely projects that you should not see on your TV at home. Like you don't go watch Oppenheimer in your living room. Go watch it in 70 millimeter if you can. Though I find IMAX theaters to be way too loud.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that
So
movie was.
anxiety inducing. Yowza. Um, I'm trying to think of another really good one like that. Um, yeah, I don't know.
But also even just
No
like picking
examples
it
in my
up too,
head.
like once it comes out, I feel like I might be maybe a little bit in the minority here because I know it's kind of like a dying breed, but like once it comes out on physical release, if you guys can go and pick it up when it hits Blu-ray and 4K.
Do
I'm
they
so
still make DVDs?
uh I think they do DVDs, but it's like more like the Blu-rays, 4Ks. But they're still
I didn't
releasing.
know 4Ks was a thing.
Wait, what?
What
That's
are 4Ks? What are you talking about?
4Ks is like so that's like high def. That's
Well, I
like
know what 4K is, but you're saying
yeah.
it like it's a noun. Is that like also a thing you can
Yeah,
buy?
so like it's saying it looks like a Blu-ray, like a disc. It's just a higher definition. So like you have to have a 4K TV or a 4K TV and player in order to be able to watch it. But you just get that higher definition. Everything's a little bit more
Mhm.
crisp.
You
The
can see
audio,
everybody's pores.
yeah.
That's
So
kind of
I that's but that stuff's going away too, which like because I Best Buy
Mhm.
is they're like stopping like as of I think it's as of like January, I want to say most of the stores are just not carrying physical media as far as like movies and stuff like anymore. And
wild.
it just stinks because especially when it comes to like the streaming stuff, you could have a project that goes on there, it's on there for a while, and then
Goes away,
yeah,
and
they're
then
like, oh, you know what, we're not going to have this on here anymore. And then like you could, I'm sure there's ways that you could find it out there in the ether of the internet, but
Mhm.
there's nothing like having a physical copy of your favorite movie that you can pop in and watch in anytime, and no one can take that away from you.
You're 1,000% right. I imagine, like with most things, once the pendulum starts to swing in the other direction, some stuff will come back.
Yeah,
Not everything can be on a cloud. The
yeah.
same way we went from, what is it, like 45s to records to 8 tracks to tapes to CDs
Records
to
have come back.
iPods to records again. Right. So I hope they
Oh,
don't go back to VHS. I hope it's just DVD. Like I hope that's the line we draw.
you'd be surprised. I think it's for the VHS. I think that's more of just like a collector's thing. But you would laugh, but like if you go on like eBay and look up some of
Oh,
these movies, there's some
mhm.
that if you get them like sealed and stuff like that, that people actually are willing to pay
Top dollar.
hundreds of dollars for them. So it's kind of funny how that stuff works. But
I think new stuff is exciting, but a lot of new stuff doesn't get codified in the way it should to make sure it's actually good stuff as well.
yeah. But yeah, so make what I'm saying here, make sure you go watch this movie. It's still playing in
Yes,
theaters.
let's
I
see
I
it.
I saw it. I absolutely loved it. I can't wait to watch the original film, just because I've never experienced that before. But make sure you watch this in theaters. When it hits streaming, go stream it, and then once it releases for all you physical media collectors out there, make sure you go pick up a copy so that way you have it, for the rest of the time.
Yeah, let me know when it's on 4K, and I
I
will
will.
buy a 4K player and 4K TV.
I say I'll definitely have to let you know when it's on 4K.
Thank you. Thank you for putting me on.
You're
Uh,
you're welcome. Like I said, I mean, it's always a great time, talking to you, having you on the show. I know today, yeah, we went off track a little bit, a couple times talking about, other aspects of, the industry or different projects, but it's
great.
a blast always having you on, just having a fun conversation with a friend. So thank you so much for coming on and doing this.
No, it's always a pleasure, Pat. I'll be
Thank
back
you.
next quarter so we can talk about all the movies that came out.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you so much.